Okay, hello. My name is Mathias de Tripon, and I'm quite happy to introduce this I3h seminar. Today's speaker is Anne Hendrickx, who will talk about drug prices in Belgium, but she will also talk about an underlying model, international model put forward by the AIM to go to fair prices, and she's been a leader in developing that methodology. Now, Anne is alumna of our Solvay Brussels School. She has a degree in economics from our school. She spent 9 years in important NGOs at the Croix-Rouge and at Médecins Sans Frontières as a manager on the field, but also at the headquarters of Médecins Sans Frontières. And then she moved to the Belgian health system, first for 1 year for the study department of the Mutualité Socialiste, now called Solidaris. Then for a bit more than 10 years, from 2003 until 2014, as an advisor on medicines for the social affairs and public health ministers, Rudy de Motte and especially Laurette Hendrickx. And then since 2015, she has been an advisor on medicines for Mutualité Socialiste Solidaris. Also among connections that I think we will develop in the future, she's part of the European project Ascertain, just like we I3h are part of the I3h project, both on trying to develop sustainable and fair models of drug pricing, which is of course a huge topic, especially in those times of advances of medical knowledge, which is great, but also increases of the cost for society, which is not great at a time where public finances are under stress, and it won't get better soon. So it's wonderful to have you, Anne. Thank you for coming to enlighten us. The format is as usual. We should stop at the latest at 2 o'clock. We can have a general discussion at the end. Clarifying questions along the way are allowed, but it's for you to run the show. Thank you.
Thank you. Before digging into the paper, Solidaris wrote about the crisis in Belgium, I will maybe set the scene for those of you who are not really too familiar with drugs and medicines and how they enter the market and how they develop in Europe and in Belgium. So the first step for a drug to exist is approval. The approval is only the part about the science of the drug and how is the drug born. Usually, most of them, they start with public money that is invested in a university with some brilliant researcher finding something. If this thing is promising enough, it would be very often put in a spin-off structure, being public-private partnership, where phase 1 clinical trials will be run. Phase 1 is to test whether the drug is safe on healthy patients if it is drug as a life ahead of it. If this drug is promising enough, very often small but quite some often big pharmas will purchase that drug. There are different models, but they will purchase that drug and continue the clinical trial phases with phase 2, phase 3 trials in order to demonstrate the benefits of the drug. With that file, which can take up to 10 years, and it's quite a long process, then we go to the benefit risk assessment of the agency. Every drug has a benefit, otherwise, but every drug also has risk. So this is really just a balance with more benefits than risk for that drug compared to nothing compared to placebo or compared to even nothing. In some trials, there is no other arm. So it's a very important step. It's very robust that scientific information, but it's interesting also to know that it's not comparing the drug to current treatments or to competitors. It's really the drug itself. The marketing authorization is given in Europe by EMA, the European Medicines Agency. It's given in the United States by the FDA, in England now, and in the UK now by their new agency, and so on, Switzerland. Every country has every group of countries. So now we have a drug, and how is this drug going to be reimbursed? It's important to know that this is purely national competency. I'm talking about Europe only from now. It's purely national competency, so the company will decide where to present its drug. It's purely a company's own decision. Nobody can influence that. They will decide where to introduce, but they will also decide when to introduce. And here it's important to keep in mind that in Europe, most of the countries have an external reference pricing, meaning we look at the price in other countries in order to set our own prices, and that this has a major impact on the introduction of the reimbursement file in the countries, because of course the companies go first to the countries that they suspect will give higher prices, and later or even never to countries where the prices will be small or the market will be really small. And this is something, this impact is captured in this weight indicator that I3h has developed. This indicator is showing many other things, but it's showing also where the companies introduce first, with Germany as a leading country, of course, because in Germany there is a free pricing system. So as soon as the drug is registered at EMA level, it can be sold in Germany at a free price. So this is of course very interesting for the company, because this is the first price that will be compared to. So now in the reimbursement, of course, we will negotiate the price. So how are the prices of innovative drugs set today? I'm not talking about generics or older drugs. I'm really talking about new innovative drugs. The first starting point for the negotiation is the price that the company decides to present. This price is presented without any rationale or justification. This is just a price. They say we consider this price as what we think our drug is worth. It's an anchor price in the way that clearly they play on the psychological aspect of, okay, this price is very expensive, so it must be a very important drug, it must be a very efficient drug. And there is a very, you call it funny story about that, like for Solidaris, we will talk again about Solidaris, the most expensive drug for a while. And the CEO of Novartis, for a few months, mentioned that the price could be between 1.5 and 5 million for that drug. And they just played it, okay, we don't know, we didn't decide yet. It could go up to 5 million, and at the end, they said, okay, it's 1.9 million, and most of the actors said, okay, wow, lucky us, we could have paid 5. I mean, the drug was never worth 5. It's just that he could have paid 10, 20, that was the same. It's just a psychological aspect that has a very strong influence. And I can really testify on that influence because I'm a member of the CFM, CTG, the Committee for Reimbursement of Drugs. And I can really see some actors, very serious people with very strong education, mentioning, okay, we cannot ask a decrease of 75 or 80% on the price of the drug. That's insane. You can't do that. And they just don't realize that, of course, we can ask for a decrease of 75% because the company increased the price. If they multiply the price by 10, then you can just deduct 90%, and it's still fair. So this is a very important psychological tool that they use a lot. Then, from the starting point, we start negotiating with players, with the companies. And first of all, we will try to evaluate the therapeutic value of the drugs. But this value is very often very theoretical because, of course, we are talking about clinical trials. As I said, sometimes it's against the competitor, but that's very few. Most of the time, it's against placebo or even nothing. So okay, we know what happens in a clinical trial for 2 years in a very controlled context, but we still don't know really what the value of that drug is. Then we use that value to put it in very complex model to calculate the value of that drug expressed in money. And we use this quality that I guess most of you know, the quality adjusted life-year gain. So we try to get a ratio between what we get and what we would pay for it. These models are very complex. They are developed by the company, so very often there are biases in those models. And it's important to keep in mind that there is absolutely no link with the cost of the product. They just mention the value, the aspect, the extension of life or the quality of life, but nothing is related to the product itself. And then in the negotiation, we will try to decrease that price up to a level that very often is called the willingness to pay of a country. So it's often expressed as a money pressure. But actually, very often it's more a reluctance to refuse because some drugs come with a very high price. We don't want to pay them at that price, but also we cannot refuse them because they have a suffering population. The drug might be very useful. So it's more where do we stop? And the concept of what the market can bear, I think is the closest concept to reality. It's really about getting up to where we would not pay more and they would not go down. A very important thing also that is being developed more and more is that in almost every country now, the price of innovative drugs are in confidential managed entry agreements. Those managed entry agreements can be very sophisticated and try to capture uncertainties and risk, but most of them, it's just purely refund, and it's just a tool not to show the real price that you pay, because as I mentioned before, the external reference pricing will look at the price, and if it's in a confidential contract, you will only see the public price. You will never know how much it's paid. So this is the price that every country will look in other countries, and this is a key element in the structure. What about competition? Is there competition? Yes, there is competition. Lots of Me Too's drugs are coming. Me Too's are drugs with small structural differences and some added value. Sometimes the added value can be quite important, but not always. They just will follow exactly the same process to enter the market. They will follow the same process as for the price and reimbursement as the breakthroughs. They will get the same price or even more because they have small differences that they can argue as an important value. So this competition has no positive effect on price. And even it has a negative effect on volume because very often when you have more than one drug, you have an increased volume that is not always reflecting guidelines. It's reflecting more the marketing, the knowledge of the physicians, but it's not always what is good for the health of the population. And for these Me Too's, same as for the original drug, there is no transparency. They also go into confidential agreements, so nobody knows what is said. It's very important to understand that myself, I'm sitting at the CNM, and I don't know the real price of drugs. So when a Me Too is coming, I will ask the same price as the one I asked for the original drug. But actually, I don't know what price was negotiated for. It might be much higher. It can't be lower. It can be
Who knows the price? Who knows?
The company, the very small team in the health insurance administration, and the minister who is signing. So the company, actually, the only person who has a complete view of prices in Europe is the company. They are the ones who know exactly how much is paid in each country. But the people from Hendrickx know prices in Belgium. The one from France, they know France. The one from Germany, they know Germany. But they are the only ones who have a full picture of the prices. So what is the result of this kind of negotiation? It's really very sharply increasing prices. Everybody was shocked in 2015 with the price of the hepatitis C treatments at 40,000 euro for the treatment of one person, knowing that more or less 1% of the population is affected by diseases. So that was a huge market. Then came the immunotherapies, very important breakthroughs in oncology, but very, very high prices. They stood up, I don't know, in Belgium, at sales above the 300 millions just for Belgium. And the budget for Belgium is 5.6 billion, so it's 8% the budget. After that, we entered the era of ATMPs and of gene therapies. Yescarta was one of the two first CAR T cells drugs with a price tag of above 300,000. And now we are approaching the 3 billion for this kind of gene therapies. These escalating prices have been documented very little, unfortunately, in Europe, but a bit more in the USA. And in the USA, there is a very interesting study showing that the median launch price for 1 year of treatment has increased from 2,000 to 180,000 in 13 years. Of course, it's different products. There are more orphan products now than there were at that time, but also the notion, I mean, the definition of orphan is a bit abused also in the system. So this is still showing a very sharp increase with 20% increase every year. That's very significant. The impact of these very high prices is that the access has to be restricted, even in Belgium. We have a case with hepatitis C drugs for 2 years where we were only treating patients with very advanced damage to the liver. And so you had to wait until your liver was damaged enough in order to be treated, but the damage to the liver was never restored. So that was just the most absurd decision that we had to make just because of the money. As I said, 40,000, 1% of the population is 4 billion just for Belgium. We didn't have that money. Nobody has that. Same for cancer therapies. Some are very much lighter in terms of adverse for the patients, but they cost much more than the old chemotherapy. We have to limit that. For some orphan drugs, we refuse the reimbursement of drugs that cost hundreds of euros per year because they have little impact on the disease, but sometimes they have a very good impact on quality of life. But it's not affordable. I mean, quality of life, if it's 400,000 a year, you cannot afford it. Some also difficult decisions like migraine treatments that we have now that are much more powerful, but they cost a lot. So we have to limit it to women that have at least 4 or 5 episodes a month. That's a lot for the months. So this is all linked not to the value, the scientific value of the product, but linked to the price of the product. And this problem of access is much stronger in Eastern and small Southern European countries where really access, we don't discuss the same points when they discuss access, is really basic access. We are very rich and lucky country. So why is all this? I think the main point is this opposed goals and this unbalanced negotiation. We could tackle that a little bit, that companies have a very good knowledge of everything that's happening, and they are very coherent. They want profit, they want to make profit, and it's very clear. They know how they will do it. They have clear cutoffs. In front of them, there are states, 27 states in Europe, each one negotiating separately, totally blindfolded because we don't know how much the other countries are paying. So this is really the worst balance negotiation you can imagine. And in addition to that, the countries having to decide, there's a lot of pressure from the public opinion. There are very strong groups of patients, and it's really important that we have good patient representation, but sometimes the pressure they put on the governments is making us choosing for some prices that we would not choose if we didn't have that pressure. And it's interesting to show that the patients sometimes really have to be created. The DVP, I don't know if you remember that, but it's a little girl who could not have access to Zolgensma because the Zolgensma was not in Belgium, and she would be too old later. And the parents organized a crowdfunding, and the Belgian population paid 1.9 million to get that drug. But the company took 1.9 million. I mean, the company did not give any refund. I mean, they just took the full price for that baby. A bit later, they organized a lottery because they didn't have enough product for all babies, and they organized a lottery. So every week they would take the number of a baby and then treat that baby. So these are the kind of practice that countries having to decide on reimbursement are. We don't really think it's going to be better because the problem is that with this very important global revenues, of course, the companies have to pay for the cost of goods. They invest in R&D still a little, but everybody is saying that there is really an innovation gap now, and that's what they could discover 10 or 20 years ago. It's much more difficult now. Still some sales and marketing, of course, because it's we are in the oops. But there are some other practices like share buybacks to increase the value of their share that they can do with their very important global revenues. But also because they can find in-house the discovery, they buy other companies. And these companies are purchased at very, very high prices. And of course, this very huge cost will have to be paid by the private later on. I mean, there is no way we can say, okay, you have small prices if you have such important investment. So is there an alternative to this escalating prices? We believe at I3h, which I'm part of, at Solidaris, we are part of this association of international funds. We believe that we can have new pricing models, but first of all, we have to be clear about our goal. What we want is to set objective, transparent, and fair starting point for price negotiations. Fair setting of prices would be better, but let's start with fair pricing negotiation. What fairness is has been discussed a lot, and WHO has this fair pricing forum for many years, and we agree that the definition they got is probably the best we can have. So a fair price is one that is affordable for both the healthy and the patient, but that also provides sufficient incentive for the industry to invest in innovation because we still want to have new products. There was an interesting P&G paper on what aspects you need to have in order to have a fair price both for seller and for buyers. The cost aspect, of course, is very important, but the value also, if you still want to have new drugs, was a key element. So the way we can have good negotiation, of course, is to restore a balance in negotiation. And the idea would be to have one single market acting as a negotiator for price. The criteria, of course, have to be objective if you want to reach something fair. And we believe that there is no way we can have something fair if you have a link with the reality of it. So what I3h developed is a model. It's a very basic algorithm with only 5 elements. 4 elements are linked to the cost, the R&D. And the R&D, of course, is related to the number of patients because you need to recoup your R&D on a limited amount of patients. So that's a very important element. Then you need to produce your products, and you need to have overhead costs. The sales and the medical information aspect is still important. We don't agree on marketing. We don't agree that drugs should be advertised like any other products. But medical information is still important. That that doctors get good technical information on the product is something that the states should provide. But if they don't provide it, still probably can be a good partner for that. Of course, if you are in the stock exchange, you need a basic profit that I will put as part of the cost. But then, in order to get new interesting drugs, we need some innovation drugs. We need something to make companies choose the right targets. The addition of these 4 elements, the 5 elements, give you a European fair price per treatment. The idea is to have one single price for Europe, one single market, one single price. But we can easily imagine some system where the prices will be different among European countries with some kind of compensation fund or one. It's just only a technical part.
About the different items, can you put some percentage for each to see how much
It depends on
ideally?
Actually, that's the thing. It's linked to reality. So there is no ideal. The ideal is to stick to reality. But I will develop later.
Okay.
Because this is really the key point. Is that we want the fairness is that we cover the real cost. It's not that we put some impossible targets. We just want. But I will come to it. The strength of the model is that it's based on both cost and value. It's not a cost plus, it's a cost plus or cost value, yes, cost value plus whatever. It's not a cost plus. You will see that it's not captive of full transparency, and the criteria are objective, predictable. I mean, if you know how much you spend, you know what price you will get. So let's dig into the parameters. The first one, very important one, of course. The R&D. What we take is the global R&D that was spent on the discovery of one product. If the company is willing and able to open its books, we would like to have the real amount. We agree to have a real amount of what was spent on R&D, but we cap it to a maximum of 2.5 billion, which in the literature is what is presented as the cost of discovering right. From this global expenditure on R&D, we take the share of Europe. For that, we calculated the population in the EU 27 on the current population for innovative drugs. So it's 35%. And we divide this amount for Europe by the target populations of that indication in Europe. How do we calculate the target population? We take the prevalence, if it's a disease that has prevalence, or we take the incidence for 10 years for that drug, because we consider that a drug will be under patent for 10 years. In reality, it's often a bit more than that, but it's okay. We don't mind being a bit large. We also consider that if a drug will be accessible to all Europe, probably not more than 50% of all the patient population will be treated. It wouldn't be possible for all countries to access the patients. The testing capacity might be too small. Still, the budget might be a problem. So we consider 50% treatment rate. And we also consider some competition. As I said, very often there are me too's. So we consider up to 3 competitors. Often there are more than 3 competitors, but usually it's 3 companies. You might have, like in hepatitis C, you have much more than 3 competitors, but actually you have 3 big companies. They all launch their products and come with other products. So 3 competitors reflects quite well the situation. So this gives you the R&D per patient for one treatment. The very difficult part of that, of course, is what do you consider R&D? Because in R&D, if we want to be fair, we have to include the cost of failure. Clearly, we cannot say, okay, only the last 200 million that you spend on that drug. We also need to include what was spent otherwise. We can make sure that it's accounted for only once by audits and other tools. But we also need to have very clear rules about publicly funded R&D. We know that more or less 40% of all R&D is funded by the public, but this company was purchased. This research was purchased by the company. So how do you account that in your R&D? There are some very important tax returns in some countries. The opportunity cost, on the other hand, is considered by the company. So do we have to include that in our model, or can we just say that no, we take purely real cost? How do we consider a buyout? An interesting example of Pharmasec, which was the company that discovered the Sovaldi, the first hepatitis C drug. They had 271 million research. That's clearly in their books. It's very obvious. They spent less than 300 million on research, but they were purchased for even 11 billion. So what do we do with that amount? Was that just an investment? Was that part of R&D? These are very difficult decisions to be made on the model. And many people say, okay, it's impossible for the companies to allocate the R&D to one project. It's too complicated. And they would not want to give it because the transparency is not possible in affairs. And we say, okay, if you are not able or not willing to give transparency, then we will give you a lump sum of 250 million. That's low, but you don't need to justify anything. And 250 million is what you find in the literature, where if you go in non-industry settings, you can develop medicines for 50 to 250 million. So this is, yeah.
But why would they accept the 250 million if they give a little bit of transparency and can go up to the 2.5 billion?
Yeah, it's a price of transparency.
But the idea is that they give them the choice.
Yeah.
Either you don't have to say anything, you can get to a 50. If you want more, try and convince us. So they can choose.
Today, nobody ever mentions the amount of R&D. Never. It's really like a key.
And to what extent would you accept the merger and acquisition costs that the company, Big Pharma, puts into the cost of R&D, which I don't think is.
I think we cannot. I mean, in that example, we cannot take only 271 million. Probably it's not fair. But I guess we need to find a ratio between real R&D and the rest. It's investment. I mean, they invested in people. They have new people for new researchers. They have new buildings, probably. They have assets, whatever. That's not part of the price of the product. It's an investment from the company. It doesn't have to be paid back.
Who changed this number of 11 billion? Who changed this number from?
This is from the bookkeeping from Gilead.
Gilead paid.
They paid that, yeah.
The acquisition price.
So they are transparent there.
Yeah, but well, they have to because they spend that money, so it's
But at least they gave the number.
Yeah, actually, I don't think Gilead gave them. It's researchers who found them in their bookkeeping. It's not really. Well, no, actually, but they in the stock exchange financial information, they give that kind of information because they are proud of it and they show that they are rich.
Okay, so we can extract such number by a different organization, not necessarily by the company.
For the buyers, yes.
That's
what they paid for the company. That's not what they paid in research. The most difficult one is how much they paid in research.
Okay.
So these points would also include killing of competitors. So if the company really wants to ruin the competitor, they will buy a competitor. Why would the public have to reimburse them?
Yeah. That's why it's. I mean, this is really research we are looking for. It's not all financial strategies or commercial strategies that they might have, but it's a very it's very strong for the company. It's a very important change compared to what's happening today. So that's a very long run project, of course. But it's really sending key messages also that okay, this is not any good. It's a public good. You cannot just make whatever you want with our money because actually this 11 billion is our money. It's the money we pay for other drugs. So we could set rules that do not allow some purely commercial important investments and that we will not pay for. At least.
I guess if I may clarify a bit, so this so the goal here, which I think, and by the way, the NIH, National Institute of Health, at some point said, this is the kind of thing we should go towards. So cost-based pricing. And then at some point, due to political realities, it was withdrawn in the US, so they don't have it. Then the question, of course, is the devil is in the details, how do you do it? But I guess the point is, I guess the company said, look, you know, I bought a company that has done research. That research has been very successful, therefore I bought it for 11 billion. So I need to make sure that my shareholders get their money back. And then I think you rightly say, look, this is not our problem. This is not something relevant from the point of view of a cost-based methodology. And indeed, as you said, Cyril, for example, maybe by buying a competitor, you hope to jack the price, and because of you hope to do that, it's 11 billion. So the 11 billion is not relevant. You know what you're saying, and I agree with you.
So the second parameter is the production cost. There again, we apply the same methodology. If there is transparency, it is possible because it's not always easy if you're a factory to allocate your costs to each product. We can go for lump sums, and these lump sums we set 5 because they are from very different type of drugs. The chemical drugs are very easy to produce. It's just powder chemicals. It's quite easy. But if you are an orphan medicine, you might have a very, very small population, and of course you don't have any economy of scale. So your price per month might be higher. So 50 for chemical, 250 for orphans. Same idea for biologicals. Biologicals are much more expensive because these are drugs produced on the base of living substances, blood, eggs, mushroom, ovaries of hamster. Yeah, this really explains a big difference in production cost. So we go for a sum of 150 for a month for biologicals and multiply by 5 if it's an orphan. For gene or cell therapies, it's one-shot drugs. It's not really drugs actually, it's a process, but it's in the drug structure at the moment. And in Germany, in hospital settings, they can produce this drug for 60,000 euro. So this is the lump sum that we allocate for the production of those drugs. The monthly cost is then used for all the duration of the treatment. It could be a short treatment, but if it's a chronic disease, we consider 10 years of treatment. This is very simplified, but otherwise we cannot have a model, an easy model if we don't simplify it. Then the two next cost elements are sales and medical information and basic profit. We apply fixed percentages for both of them. Sales and medical information related to the amount of R&D, because we could consider that the more R&D you need, probably the more complexity you have. So that might justify more money for medical information. And the basic profit is, we set it at 8% of all the costs, which is something we found in the literature as something acceptable for risk industry. It appears a bit low compared to what they have now, but it's anything in this case. The next parameter, we are not anymore in the cost, but we are in the value elements. And this is a very key element because this is where we will incentivize proper research. So we will give additional a bonus, which is an additional profit that can go from 5 up to 40% of all the costs. And that is related to either a curative treatment, that's of course what we all hope for, but it doesn't happen a lot. And then because it's a lot in oncology, we've set some percentages according to the progression-free survival or overall survival of the drug. To consider also the value of orphan medicines, we also added a 10% on bonus for quality of life, because this is very often only what you have in orphan medicines, but it's still very important. In addition to that model, what we wanted to show with the model is something very, very concrete. If you have you have a new drug, if you apply to modern, what amount would you pay? We really wanted to allow people to look at the price that's the concrete price that you pay and just think about it. So I will take the example because it's very easy to show of Sovaldi again, the first hepatitis C drug. So in the calculator, we help a bit the user with the choice of the disease because as I said, the prevalence incidence is different according to chronic or to rare or if you have ultra rare, you will have a prevalence expressed in 100,000. But here it's a chronic, so it's a percentage of the population. And as I said, it's 1% of the population is affected by hepatitis C in Europe. The calculator gives you immediately the target population for a period of 10 years. And as I said, we consider only 50% of that population might be treated. Whatever the price, we will never probably reach more than 50% of the population. Then we again help the user to choose the R&D for that drug. 250 million it's our lump sum, as I explained. 2.5 is the maximum, and 800 million is actually what in total Gilead spent for R&D. So Pharmacet has spent a bit less than 300 million, and Gilead paid the rest. So in total, they invested 800 million in R&D. Numbers of competitors, there are a lot, so 3 in that market. It's a chemical medicine with the lump sum of 50 euro per month, and it's 2 months treatment. It's a very short treatment. Our sales and medical information is fixed. Basic profit is fixed. It was an important medicine for life-threatening disease. There were no real alternative, and it was curative. So now I just asked the calculator to give me the price. As I said, hepatitis C treatments in Belgium were around 40,000 euro per patient. The fair price is here, 830 euro per patient per treatment.
How much?
40,000.
40,000.
Yeah. Yes. A bit less because it's in a management agreement, but something around there. That was the price everywhere. Actually, 40,000 was the price everywhere. And Sabine Vogler from GOG did a study, and she showed that in average they had a refund of 25%. So okay, 30,000. We only paid 30,000. So the fair price is 800. If we want to look at the difference that would make if we use the purchase power parity across Europe, Bulgaria would pay 400, and we don't take Luxembourg because it's weird, but Ireland would pay 1,600. If we want to discriminate a bit more, and but it really doesn't make a big difference.
40 times difference.
Yeah.
40 times.
Yeah. Of course, this is all into our parameters. But as we saw in that example, the parameters are quite fair. I mean, we consider the 800 million makes sense. It's not that big. We didn't say it. So the model and the calculator has been used by not much yet, but by academics. In one paper from University for Society, they use it for repurposed drug Namiska, and the Minister of Health in the Netherlands used that paper to refuse the reimbursement of that product because it's not. It has been used also by AIM's members to calculate the potential savings that we could have. So the German, the TK Technical started with the study, and Solidaris did the same study. In Germany, they showed that they could save 13 billion every year. So Solidaris, that's a paper that was added to the seminar. We did the same study, starting first with explaining a bit the Belgian situation with the very high prices. This is the price of the most costly drugs per patient. It's the cost per patient that we look. in 1 year, and this is of course all orphan medicines, because these are the most expensive, but so those drugs, they go from 200 to more than 600,000 euro per patient per year, and this cost we will pay all during all the life of the patient. The last, so we are talking about millions of euros for every patient with every patient that will survive because they can't all survive. But we were talking about millions for each patient. In the study, we also look at the price of the most expensive treatments. If we look at the cost for the health insurance, so this is not per patient, but this is the cost of the drug. As I mentioned earlier, Keytruda, we spend 300 million every year for Keytruda in Belgium. So the top 5 of drugs that cost the most to the health insurance are all oncology drugs. This here you see the price per year per patient per year for these drugs, but it's a bit difficult because it's 1 year to 2020, and sometimes the treatment was longer than that. And also a very important thing for these drugs is that they are not as effective as we would hope they would be. And for immunotherapies, all those drugs are immunotherapies, 2/3 of the patients that have been treated in between 2016 and 2018 had died by the end of 2019. So in the quite limited amount that we have for those patients in 2020, you capture the fact that many patients died during treatment. When a patient is still alive, the total cost of the treatment is 127 euros, for instance. So these very expensive medicines make, of course, a very important sharp increase in the expenditures in Belgium. So the oncology went from 368 million in 2013 to more than 1.4 billion in 2020. In 2023, we are above 1.6 billion for this oncology drugs. These costs, of course, are gross. I could not deduct the refunds that are in confidential management agreements because I don't have these refunds. So I don't know how much we had in refunds in 2013 and how much we had. One thing that is very characteristic from the Belgian situation is that we are using a lot of these management agreements. In Belgium, we call them contrat article 81, contrat article 111. It's the name of the article in the royal decree managing the reimbursement. We are really on one of the top countries for this kind of management agreement. We use them systematically. For instance, for new medicines reimbursed since 2015, we have 900 new expenditures in cancer, and only 25 million of them are without management agreements. So all the rest is management agreements. So we are not able to compare anything anymore. The same drug with different indications has different prices, but everything is in confidential contract. Another drug coming for one of those indications, we don't know the price that we pay for the first one. We don't know the price we pay for the second one. We have no idea. The only thing we know is the total. We know that in total, in 2023, we will spend 7 billion. We will have 1.4 billion refund through this management agreement. So our real cost is 5.6. But we don't know how much we got as a refund on each drug. Yeah.
And can you see an increase in information since the new act in 2020 on increased transparency on the management agreements that was adopted?
No, nothing. Well, nothing, because it's actually the only transparency there is toward the Cour des Comptes, and it's not for the actors of the system, actually. It's really so in the CRM we are 23 members, and 4 members from the mutual funds are part of this group de travail, working groups, negotiating the confidential rebates. But all the rest of the CTG, we have no idea what the real prices are. We know in total how much refund there is, but we have no clue if it's 90% on this one and 10% on this one, or if it's 40% for everybody. We don't know. We don't know. We know what we ask for. We ask for 50%, 80%, 90% increase sometimes because the prices are so high, but we don't know what the result is. So coming back to the application of the model, we took the same medicines as the German insurer took. So they did that study with their own people and also with Bremen University, and they selected 7 drugs, which we agree are very interesting because the 2 ones that you see in yellow are orphan medicines, and the Zolgensma is a gene therapy. So this is really what we are seeing now. The 2 drugs in purple are oncology drugs, and as I mentioned, this is really a very important part of the expenditures and of the rising expenditures. And then we have in green 3 chronic diseases that are still the most important part of the treatment, especially in pharmacies, in public pharmacies. And one is very interesting because it's the Hendrickx. It's a drug immunosuppressant for psoriasis, arthritis, and Crohn's disease. And these 3 diseases together, they spend more than 400 million in Belgium. So this is another very important part of our expenditure. So it's a good choice to select those drugs. They showed in Germany that the average refund they would have with the fair price would be 63%. And that's the 13 billion they could spare. So now we come back to the parameters that we have used in Belgium on the same product. One thing that is very interesting is that if you look at the target population, so the number of patients you have, you might expect that chronic disease will have a very important amount of population and that cancer drugs, for instance, will have a very small amount. And you see here that Opdivo, because it has many indications, it started with melanoma, but then they increased and there are many more. There's a potential population of 11 million just for Europe, when Jardiance, which is a diabetes drug, but that comes after some other drugs, only has 6 million or almost 7 million population. So it's a prejudice that we have that cancer population will treat only small population, but it's really not true. But in cancer, you have different realities. The one next, Lonsurf, has less than 1 million. So it has 10% of the number of patients that Opdivo has. So you also have very different realities when you look at cancer. So the R&D per patient, also quite surprisingly, can be low in those cancers. For Opdivo, for instance, in the total cost per treatment, you have only 47 euro for R&D. In Lonsurf, you have only 180 euro for R&D. Of course, we are talking about the lump sum of 250 million, but even if you multiply by 10, you can see that this is really not major. This is really not explaining why we pay 100 and more thousand euros for these treatments. It's interesting also to see that production costs might be quite expensive for long-term chronic treatments. Of course, here also we use our lump sum, and maybe our lump sum is too high. But if you look at Entresto and Hendrickx, you can see that the major part of the price will be the production and not at all the R&D. Then, if we put everything together, if we compare the price that we pay today for these drugs and the price that we pay today, we adapted it to the fact that some of them have managed entry agreements. So we took the average refund in managed entry agreement in 2020, which is 41%. So these current prices that you see here are the closest to what we can estimate the real prices are. So Zolgensma, it's not 1.9 million, it's 1.1 because we deducted 41% as we believe a probable refund. Same for Spinraza and other that were under patent. And you see that comparing the real price paid to the fair price still shows you that we pay for many drugs more than 10 times the price. Especially for oncology drugs, as I said, we pay 16, 18 times more than what we should pay, and for orphan medicines. For the other ones, okay, chronic treatments, we expected it a little. We pay a little bit too much, but not that much. Actually, it's really in oncology and in orphan medicines that the prices have no justification.
So this current price already includes the rebates?
Yes. For the average rebate, because we don't have the specific rebate, but the average rebate. So we calculated if we take current expenses for those 7 drugs, which is a bit above 120 million, and if we apply the fair price and we get to a price that is a bit above 30 million, we would have savings of 76%. So this is the average savings that we would have by applying the fair price in Belgium. Then in order to extrapolate this to the global budget for drugs in Belgium, we took the medicines that have been reimbursed since 2015 because we want to apply this model only to new innovative medicines. Otherwise, I mean, all medicines probably have prices that are much lower now. So we took only the medicines that were reimbursed since 2015. On the from those medicines, 1.4 million are with a managed entry agreement. So we apply for this 1.379 million an average return of 41%, which gives us 568 million that we have to deduct. And this gives us the net actual expenditure in blue for these drugs. To these current net expenditures, we deduct 76%, which is the average decrease we have with our 7 drugs. And we reach a fair amount that we should have paid of 320 million. The difference between the two is 1 billion savings. So this is with the current parameters of the model, what Belgium could spare every year, 1 billion. This is 20% of the expenses for medicine, so it's a major, really a major effect. So what about the implementation of this AIM model? Of course, it's not really for today. Okay, we call it a staged implementation. First of all, I mean, we have to do what we do here. I mean, raise awareness. I mean, just fuel the debate and okay, show people what it would be if we had that kind of prices, what difference it would make. On the long term, we believe that it's possible to implement this level on very long term, of course, but at EU level and actually practically, it's not that difficult. I mean, the companies have to provide lots of data for the registration at the MI level. This data that we need in order to run the model, meaning the patient population, R&D, and production cost, could be provided at MI level. That could be compulsory in any file. Of course, there is an appraisal aspect in the innovation bonus. Somebody has to say, okay, is this drug really giving you extending life, or is it really an important quality of life improvement? That could be done by the new HTA bodies that is being put in place. And as for the registration of drug, the decision might be done by the Commission. So technically, it's not something. It's not really something impossible. In raising awareness, Solidaris decided to run this research and to do a campaign about it. We translated the calculator in French so that French users might enjoy it easier. And we also made a petition at the federal parliament. So for that petition, we needed 25,000 signatures. On the website, we have 27,000 and more, but we have lots of paper signature also, so we are way above the 25,000 signature we have. And so this will give us one very important thing. It will give us a hearing in the Commission à la Chambre, a Committee for Public Health at the Parliament. And there we will have the opportunity to discuss our proposal to change the law. I will just explain it later. And the second call that we make in the petition is that as Belgium will have the presidency of the European Union very shortly, we want this mechanism to be put on the agenda.
Is it on the agenda? Is it on the agenda?
Not really. No, it's not as such. It's no. But there are still conferences to come, and yeah, we are trying to get something, but not at the moment. So what we propose for Belgium at this moment is still quite moderate. It's that in the files that are presented at the Committee for Reimbursement of Drug, in all the elements that are being presented, we would present also a price calculated according to this model or another model that gives a transparent, objective, and fair price. So it would just be an information element, additional information element. It really doesn't mean that we will set the prices based on that calculation, but at least, as I mentioned in the first, almost first slide, there is this anchor effect that, okay, this drug is worth 100,000 because they asked for 100,000, and we will show that actually no, this drug is not worth that. It could also as well be worth 10 times less if you look at the parameters we have in the model, and this will at least improve transparency, and we hope this will help negotiators to reach a fairer price. That's the first step, but it's also important that most of the time, European laws and regulations come from each country. So if some countries start implementing in their own regulation this kind of model, this really improves the chances that at the end, at European level, they will agree on something for the union. And in all this work of raising awareness and trying to go forward for the model, as Matthias explained, AIM, represented by myself, is part of the I3h project funded by this Horizon funds. And in that model, we will develop a practical tool with models in pricing, cost effectiveness, and reimbursement. So the idea is to have something as easy as the calculator, in accessible online, and integrating pricing, cost effectiveness, and reimbursement, which is really not easy because, as I tell them very often, if you have a cost effectiveness model with a threshold, then you have a price, because everybody goes to the threshold. It goes for the threshold, of course. So how do you include price in thresholds or thresholds in price? It's but we still have 3 years to work on that. And my last word will be, before thank you, will be the petition. We have more than enough, but please feel free to sign the petition, because the more signatures we have, the more power we have, and we are happy to see how people support us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So thanks a lot, Anne, for a very stimulating presentation. I'm sure there will be questions and comments. We can start with the people in the room, but Naomi, you will also show me the list of questions.
People online to ask a question.
Sorry?
We have people to ask a question.
Okay, so there will be 2 people online at least, and a third one now, Sanae. But okay, first Roland, and then Shishian, and then okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. It was a very stimulating talk and very promising, I would say. But do you already have some feedback from the petition you sent from the government? And do you have already some feedback from other member states? Because, as you mentioned, it has to be through unity within Europe, which is not so easy, because as you know, health is not in the Rome Treaty. So this is my just few questions. Thank you.
Well, unfortunately, there is only, I think, the Minister of Health from the Netherlands that is really brave, that they're using this kind of model. Because for the moment, at the moment, we don't have real support from any governments. But also, this is, I mean, this is really a lobby work that we are doing, and many many organizations in health support are bringing the subject. So at the moment, it's not effective. Also because, as I mentioned, you cannot really apply it in a country, in a single country. So this is, we are hoping a lot with the new commission that we can have new members also of the parliament supporting, and everybody is pushing a bit the groups. I myself have been presenting this to the European Socialist group, and they've put the fair price in their program. So it's coming through the through the policy, but it's at the government. It's of course it's such a change of paradigm that it's very different for a government that is really in the day-to-day business to do anything with that. It's
They should have some perspective.
yeah, that's not that much what governments have.
Okay, Hisham?
Yes, I have two small questions. First one is that, so how to guarantee that these firms can report their true R&D costs, because they are more willing to report more of their R&D costs than the community.
But I think with some auditing tools, it's, I mean, lots of requirements are secured by auditing. So I think it's of course we really need to develop a very clear methodology. That's the main point. That it's because it's I mean I can't sense, you know, bookkeeping is a lot about methodology and definition. So I guess it's some important work to be done, but
Yeah, it's quite important. And the second question is that, so when we consider the price of the drugs, should we also consider the different holders of these drugs? Because usually the small firms take higher risk when developing these drugs, even if they have the same amount of the R&D cost. So
yeah, it's true that I didn't put it in this in the model, but I think now that I'm working with Ascertain and I can look at the reality of companies, probably we will need to have some new elements, like taking into consideration the type of firms, but like also the local preferences. That is something that is coming up at the moment, and probably research that has been done in Europe and that cost more, because it's more expensive to run research in Europe, might have a different price than some other research from bigger companies with the environment, for instance. We didn't consider it at all, and in our project, I mean the I3h also, I mean, you have to include the environmental aspects. Also, there are new elements that need to be added in the model, probably to capture fairness for the industry, because we are requesting more and more from them, and yeah, probably it's we need that element.
Okay, thank you. Thierry, then we'll move to the questions online, and then since time is flying, I would just spend 2-3 minutes summarizing at the end.
Presentation. I'm learning about this one. I'm trying to formulate my sense about the comments on cost effectiveness threshold, and the model. This is an interface between eventually you will be able to compare everyone in different countries like Ireland with high competitive situation? Would the model be helpful in this case, or I'm not sure about that, just about yourself, about the interplay between the cost factor, especially between the model and proposed fair pricing.
Yeah, actually, that's the problem that I have a bit in the ascertain project is that it's either one or the other. I mean, if you apply this model, there is you cannot include a threshold in there. There is no notion of threshold. And if you apply a strict threshold as they are using at the moment, then you don't negotiate the price. But maybe that's where we could we talk about a lot about variable thresholds, and that could be more in the thresholds that you consider these elements probably.
Okay. Thank you. So then let's move to the questions online. So Sanay Akodat, Hendrickx, and Lydia Green. Maybe let's collect the question and then you can do a summary of answers. Sanay. Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you. So firstly, I'd like to thank you, Ms. Hendrickx, for your insightful presentation. It was truly enlightening. I'm particularly interested in those questions of reimbursement, etc., because I'm working on the burden of rare diseases. So my first question would be, well, you mentioned the importance of including the cost effectiveness of treatments in the factor in the purpose of evaluating fair pricing. So I'd like, first of all, to know if you have evaluated the cost effectiveness of SMA treatments like Zolgensma and Spinraza in Belgium, because without mentioning the fact that there is a lack of literature about this topic, I found that in my literature research that treatments such as Zolgensma show varying degrees of cost effectiveness, often influenced by the stage at which treatments begins. So how does the fair pricing model account for the differential cost effectiveness across the progression of stages disease like SMA? And then maybe I will have time for another question, but that's my first question.
No, but please collect because we collect everything.
Okay, sorry, my bad. And then it's quite linked to that, but given the implementation of a newborn screening for SMA, which allows for earlier identification and treatment of the disease, how might this early intervention strategy affect the fair pricing model for therapies like Zolgensma? Thank you.
Thank you. Frank, you start.
Yeah, hello everyone, and congratulations for the presentation. I think it's a good starting point, the model. I think it's for now still a bit of an oversimplification of the real world. But one of the questions I had was indeed for cell and gene therapies. If the cost of that treatment is really high, should we not first consider to continue the research to lower the production cost and meanwhile keep that product in a kind of research environment, even with conditional reimbursement already, in order to achieve something, definitely if it considers larger target populations, as may be the case in the future. I think there is no reimbursement system that can cope with production costs of the ones that we've just seen, like 60,000 euros. If that concerns a large population, that's not sustainable. And also for the ultra rare disorders, I guess there also some nuances need to be put into the model, even for a small chemical, if that if there is only few patients around worldwide, production costs relatively and there is some minimal costs involved, so you will end up with costs that are much higher than the ones I saw in the model, I think. Over, thank you.
Thank you. And then Linda.
Hey, also from my side, thank you so much for the presentation. It was very insightful. I have so many questions, but I will reattach one to Sanae, where she talked about the treat hard and early strategy. This is something that is very, very important in chronic diseases. But of course, you're missing a window of opportunity if you allow certain drugs to only be reimbursed when they are for the more severe or the late stage cases. So I'm wondering, is your model also taking these sort of things into account, or perhaps the fact that certain drugs will work better when they are being used in a stratified population? So I'm wondering, I didn't see any of that in the presentation, but I really wonder if you take this into account. Then, of course, you also talk about value. I think value is one of the most buzzing hot words for the moment, but it's a very, very empty word if we do not define this for each and every single disease. So is this something that you're working on together with, for instance, the I3h Institute? I think that would be a very important opportunity to make sure that everybody's talking about the same sort of value.
Which institute?
The I3h.
Oh.
Yeah, so this is something that's very, very particular for the value-based healthcare. But of course, healthcare is less complex, layered than the ones you're talking about. But then the last question is, this is a model that will tackle a lot of stakeholders. And from what I've seen from the presentation, the pharmaceutical industrial side is not playing an active role here as a stakeholder. Is this a strategy, or is it because they're not very open to participate in this discussion? I'm very curious to know how you perceive their role in the current state. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Floor is yours.
Yes. Well, I'm afraid for the strategies. I mean, you go much further. I mean, Sanae and Linda, you go much further than we do in the model, because it's just a model about pricing, and of course, all the other policies still have to remain in place. So it's and probably, yeah, the cases you mentioned, and also what Frank mentioned. Okay, do we want to pay such a heavy price now, when probably if we waited a bit longer, but how much longer, we could have more reasonable prices? It's not really elements that we considered in the pricing model, because then it becomes extremely difficult. And as we were discussing, what the initial idea of the model is really a lobbying aspect. We really want to show how far we've been with prices, and that some alternative exists. But of course, this is not something consensual, and we know that the AI model purely can never be applied like this. But by participating in projects like I3h, where there are some partners from the industry, pharmaceutical industry, but also medical devices industry, we hope to find a way to get something that is fair for everybody, and that probably will be a bit far from this ideal model from a payer perspective. But the industry actually is interested in some specific cases, like in repurposing drugs. They find it interesting because this the kind of element that they miss, that they are sometimes confronted with discussion that they don't really where they don't really find what they've put in the drug. So they consider that this is probably a positive element. And for the rest, of course, if you ask somebody, do you want to divide your prices by 10, they will just say, okay, I don't even want to talk to you, because I don't see the point. I mean, most of the time, because I've been presenting this model to the industry very often, and they say, but we don't see the problem that you have. All drugs have a very important value. So the value again, yeah, it's they are bringing a lot to the health, to the patient. So why do you want to discuss the price? Because the value of the drug is enough, and that's really exactly our point, that the system that we are using, that we have put in place, puts everything on value, and the value of a life has no limit. So we are just confronted to something we cannot manage, and we propose to manage something. The idea of minimal cost, Frank, probably it's true that for some very specific, very small population, very ultra rare diseases, we could have, as we have put a maximum for some costs, R&D costs, we could also have a minimum in order to cover or some investments in some factories. It's true that if we apply this system, for instance, for vaccines in case of pandemic, probably we would need some aspect of investment to produce, to build new factories and elements like this. So these are all elements that could be add-ons to the model, probably. And this is exactly what I'm looking for when I'm coming to this kind of forum. I get lots of ideas, and some I don't see what to do with them, but some others I try to reflect on them. And so I hope I will have better answers next time in some years.
Okay, a very 30-second addition, because then I need to close. Linda.
I think you raised something very important there, to say the value. It's important to have something to compare with. If you use, for instance, the treat to target strategy, that is something that has been called into life in order to be able to compare different drugs. And if you can also combine this with I3h, which really looks from the patient's perspective to know what is the value being added to the patient's life when they are receiving a certain treatment, these things will actually make you able to compare drugs one-to-one without having all these complex cost-effectiveness trials. I think that would be a very good way to go forward. And then you're also talking, you're speaking the language of the industrial partners, because as you say, just saying that they will have to divide everything by 10 is not attractive at all. But if you go and tap into their driving force, the competition, by saying, your drug, apparently it doesn't add as much quality as the next one, that is something that they will pick up upon and will actually also make them want to perform better. So I think that would be a very important driving force.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is that okay for you, Anne? What do you want? Okay, well, thanks a lot. I think this was very interesting. I think I can only applaud you for trying to indeed making things more objective. I think that the good news here is that, okay, we have a problem. I think everybody will agree that we have a problem. Science is moving the frontier, it's great, but it's obviously very costly currently, and so it is unsustainable. In a world where we have to deal with aging, the cost of aging, where we have to deal with the costs of transition, climate, and so on, not to mention the fact that we would need a European army, probably, given that the world is a difficult place, and that we have tax rates that people seem to find hard to increase. And so if something keeps going up the way our medicines budget do, something else will have to give. And therefore, objectivating things is important. Now, obviously, and so there we have to find ways in which we can make savings. We are here for value for money. So in that sense, what we want is indeed affordable, inclusive technological improvement. So I think we all agree on that, from industry to NGOs to now clearly, as Anne said, you are a stakeholder, so trying to push indeed for affordability and access. Industry is another stakeholder, and patients are a third group of stakeholders, and we need to align in a sense. Now, industry, I think when you look at them, they all agree that they should be responsible, and I guess everybody agrees that there has been excesses in shareholder value capitalism in the last 40 years, and that some prices are obviously much too high. I don't see anybody who has a bit of common sense who disagrees with that. On the other hand, and I saw that Anne said that too, we live in a market economy, and okay, this is a system we live in, and therefore, indeed, cutting some prices, dividing some prices by 10 will not lead to much activity in that line of business. I think evidence has shown that while biotech is probably not earning a higher risk-adjusted return than other activities, big pharma beats the stock market in risk-adjusted return by 3% a year. So there is excess money there. I think that has been shown by a finance professor at MIT, and therefore I think that is not really contestable. By the way, it doesn't mean that in Europe prices are necessarily too high, because let us agree, prices are even much higher in the US on average. So, but I think the point is, how can we indeed have high value for money? Because in some areas, it seems we are not profitable enough. AMR, we don't have new antibiotics, everybody's worried about that. So clearly the system is not working on that front. And there you could say maybe returns are not enough. So one thing is, can we decrease excessive returns on some products in order to rebalance things, either to other treatments or to some places in public expenditures? There, I thought one thing which again has been documented, this business about Me Too's and the like, I think there are things to do there. There was a very interesting study on oncology treatment in the US, again, the US, but there the FDA has these accelerated procedures for really promising new treatment. Well, it turns out that these are much less profitable than Me Too's. So clearly, there, having some work, maybe through the EMA and all these kind of things, about what it takes in authorization, could be a way to push industry towards more innovative product. Now, I think your innovation bonus is another way to go, which I think is interesting too. So there, I think I could see some room for agreement across stakeholders. I think another idea, but I had a small discussion with Anne earlier. You said, okay, we are 27, in a sense we could have one price, with, on the other hand, with a compensation system from rich to poor countries, which I think is a good idea. In a sense, and with Michel Goldman and Alain Fischer, we wrote a little piece in Fox EU on this, saying, look, we did it. We did coordinate with COVID vaccines. And in the end, frankly, even though it took a bit of time and there was urgency, and so that was a problem. But on the other hand, as a Belgian citizen, I'm happy that the EU took over rather than allowing France, Germany, Italy, and the Netherlands to go it alone. And there, I think we wouldn't have had the vaccines quickly enough. The prices, thanks to our Secretary of State, we know what the prices were there. It was illegal, but we did. So they were clearly better than the Israeli prices. Okay, the Israelis got it faster because they paid more. But I think this business, it has been well documented again, that companies play one country against the other, saying if you pay more, you'll get it faster. I think as Europe, we should use the fact that if we coordinate what we are doing at the centralized level, which is already trying to do it, Benelux A, Valletta Group, Nordic, whatever, and Visegrad are trying to do it. Why not bundle all this and try and take advantage of our bargaining power with respect to industry? Then finally, on the issue of cost versus value and the like, I think that the NIH, National Institute for Health, have been advocating just what you're trying to do. And then indeed, the devil will be in the details, and the details here are the parameters, and we may disagree a lot on the parameters, and I'm not an expert on these things to comment. But I think it's nice to have an idea about the cost. I think value is, of course, very important too. Now, as economists, we think that computing value is important and we shouldn't pay more than the value. But ideally, thanks to competition, we want the whole value not to be appropriated by the seller. Ideally, we should try and go towards the cost. Again, it's nice to say this. It's very, I'm trying to be a bit unifying. As I said, the devil will be in the details, but I think it's great if the various stakeholders can come with their methodologies and that there can be a debate and hopefully go towards a more rational structure of prices that will improve the arbitrage between innovation, which we want, and affordability and access, which we also want. So thank you very much.